Good afternoon. During the last several years, the racial tensions in this country have been strained to a point that we have not seen since the 1960s. From Ferguson to Baltimore to Cleveland, fatal fault lines between communities of color and police have broken open. And they've broken open the heart of our nation as well. Dramatic reforms were needed. Seattle was also one of those cities where tragedy and mistrust had shattered the community in 2012. 2 years before I became mayor, President Obama's Department of Justice put the Seattle Police Department under a consent decree, demanding that Seattle confront issues of unconstitutional use of force and of biased policing. When I took office, I committed that we would cooperate and collaborate with the federal judge, the federal monitor, and with the Department of Justice. My administration has been working hand in hand with the federal judge and monitor over these last few years as we reach milestone after milestone. And this year, I sent landmark police accountability legislation to the City Council, saying that we would exceed more than the technical compliance of the requirements of the consent decree. I said that Seattle would have a higher goal. Our police accountability standards would be a model of accountability, transparency, and independent oversight for the nation. Today, with the unanimous approval of the Seattle City Council, under the righteous leadership of Councilmember González, we have that legislation and that reform before us. It took tragedy in Seattle. It took tragedy in Seattle's minority community, tenacity from social justice advocates, and ultimately extraordinary teamwork from everyone involved in this legislation. The Seattle police officers, the department, the Seattle City Council, the City Attorney's Office, Pete Holmes, social justice advocates, and the Police Commission itself. This legislation is not just a model of accountability, it is a model of collaboration. And collaboration is not some fuzzy, feel nice, good word. Collaboration means you have a lot of very, very difficult conversations, and that it takes a very, very, very long time. So everyone who is standing here today, I want to thank each of you for the tenacity and the hours that you put in to make that collaboration work. Other cities across America will look to our accountability guidelines for how to reform their departments. But as they seek to emulate our work, they must be mindful of this fact. In order to match the high standards that we are setting today, they must also commit to collaborating with the advocates and the officers together in their community. They must listen directly and address the concerns of community of colors whose civil rights have been disrespected, dismissed, or disregarded too long. The U.S. Department of Justice listened. They listened to the groups of 35 Seattle civil rights organizations who sent the president a letter outlining and documenting police bias and misconduct in the city of Seattle in 2010. Unfortunately, locally, we had not been listening at that time. However, in the last 3.5 years, we have been listening. And today I want to thank, again, Seattle social justice leaders for walking with us, for waking us up. Thank you for being at the table. Thank you. You have been heard. Cities that want real reform must also appreciate and understand and support police officers who are themselves committed to public service, public safety, and public accountability. Remember, we say it often, but it's true. Police officers put their lives on the line every day. Thank you to Seattle's police force for embracing anti-bias training and for the de-escalation training. May Day was actually finally an example of how you can have freedom of speech and protest. Thank you all for embracing this reform. We've made incredible progress. In his 9th and most recent assessment of our work, noting a dramatic drop in the use of force, the federal monitor said, and I quote, The significance of this finding cannot be understated. It represents a singular and foundational milestone in the Seattle Police Department's to full and effective compliance. We are now closing in on that compliance. Of course, there are critical steps ahead of us. We have more work to do. And in conjunction with City Attorney Pete Holmes, I will transmit this legislation to Federal Judge Robart, who will review it and approve it, and we will continue to bargain in good faith with our police unions to ensure that our collective bargaining obligations are satisfied. Communities across the country will rightly marvel at what we delivered. This legislation establishes for the first time an independent role for civilians. It mandates investigation of police complaints and policies and practices. It will be led and supervised by civilians outside the police chain of command. It gives civilian OPA director and the civilian general inspector subpoena power. And this new civilian inspector general will have the authority to review any police policy or practice. Perhaps the most important, our legislation expands and makes permanent the role of the Community Police Commission. Well, the Obama administration heard and listened and responded to the progressive call that Black Lives Matter. The new administration has embraced a divisive backlash. The U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has said the Department of Justice will unwind consent decrees around this nation. For Seattle, Sessions' threat is an empty threat. We are too far along in the judicial process. We are too far along on the path of justice. Our work will not be undone by this Attorney General. It is also too late for anyone to undo the ideas that were just codified into law. For those looking to replicate our work, Jeff Sessions, you can't stop our movement. As the great civil rights leader Medgar Evers prophetically said, you can kill a man, but you cannot kill an idea. Today in Seattle, Medgar Evers' ideas of justice is alive and well. With that, let me make a few more thank yous. To the members of the Mayor's Office, to my staff who worked tirelessly over these years with the community and with the council, and in particular to the attorney to the mayor, Ian Warner, who did an incredible amount of work and gave up an incredible amount of time to make sure this work happened. So thank you to all of them. And with that, let me turn it over to the incredible Councilmember Lorena González.
Thank you so much. I went through a very long list of thank yous in full council, so I won't repeat that here, but since I have you in front of me, Mr. Mayor, I just would like to express my deep gratitude to you for all of your work and your commitment to getting this legislation right. As you end your term as our mayor in this city, I recognize that this is a very large legacy that you leave for us here at the city, and I hope that I can continue on in the efforts to oversee the implementation of what is a landmark piece of legislation. So thank you so much for your work. Today is a very, very proud day for me and so many of the people standing behind me, and of course for the people who can't be standing on these steps but live and work in our city every day and experience and interact with police every day. My deep and personal lived experiences with witnessing the aftermath of people who feel unfairly targeted by police is profound. It is why I represented people in civil rights cases for almost 10 years before becoming a council member of this great city. It is why I put in every last hour, minute, and second of the day into this legislation. But most importantly, what roots my work most are my experiences of consoling a mom who lost her son in an officer-involved shooting, or a family who feels that their dignity was stolen when her son was subjected to racial slurs, or fighting for a disabled woman who was just passing through before finding herself tossed to the dirt and tasered multiple times. It is my personal and professional experiences that fuel my intense desire to set the city on a path towards sustainable, long-term police reform efforts. That does not mean that we will have zero officer-involved shootings in the future. It does not mean that we will have zero use of excessive force or zero cases of biased policing. What it does mean is that we now have before us a system being watched by the right people who together will correct the wrongs and always strive to improve our system on behalf of our community and in the name of social justice and in the long tradition of Seattle being a leader in civil rights. I said in council chambers today that Seattle knows how to lead. This is a clear example of us knowing how to lead, and I want to thank you all so much for being on this journey with me. Our fight continues, it will continue, but mil gracias and thank you. And now Councilmember Tim Burgess.
Thank you very much. This legislation is not only just and fair for the people of Seattle, but it's just and fair for our police officers, the overwhelming majority of whom want to serve with distinction and honor for the people of Seattle. Earlier today I spoke with Sam Walker, probably one of our country's leading criminologists and reform advocates, and he said with this legislation Seattle leaps to the head of the class nationally in police reform and accountability. And I think that's what we're all going to see as we continue to take steps to implement this legislation over the coming months and years. And now one of the representatives and co-chairs of the Community Police Commission, Lorena González.
Thank you very much. I'm standing here with Reverend Harriet Walden, one of our co-chairs and signers of the original request to have the Justice Department come to Seattle, and with Isaac Ruiz, an attorney here in Seattle, and the three of us are here to speak on behalf of the Seattle Community Police Commission. We want to thank council members for the hard work and collaboration over the past half year, especially to Councilmember Lorena González for her leadership. Council members have shown courage in resisting the pressures to water down the community role in police oversight. Thank you to Mayor Murray for your commitment to police accountability reform and making it a top issue of your administration. And many thanks to the mayor's staff, as well as the council staff, for their many hours of hard and dedicated work. We also want to thank retired Judge Ann Levinson for her work as former OPA auditor. Her recommendations and technical advice over the years to this process have been invaluable. The Community Police Commission, past and present, offered their insights, shared their experiences, lent their credibility, and volunteered thousands of hours to help get us to this point. Two of our commissioners are not with us at this moment, at this momentous day. We want to express our gratitude to the late Kip Takuda and Bill Hobson. Thank you to the amazing CPC staff who have shepherded this project and demonstrated passion and commitment to the cause. But most of all, our deep thanks to community leaders and activists who helped bring the Department of Justice to Seattle in the first place and have, for years, advocated for police reform. Today is a milestone, but it is only the most recent step. Some parts must be bargained, and the council must provide full funding. We can't rest now. The mayor, the council, the city attorney, and the CPC have to continue to stand up for these reforms, put their full weight behind them, and see to it that they're fully implemented as soon as possible. To the women and men of the Seattle Police Department, we thank you for your willingness to work towards change and for your service. We know you have a difficult job, and we appreciate those of you who work to seek true healing relationships built on trust and goodwill. Mr. Mayor, this year, we transmitted to the council, and at that time, we said that we didn't agree on all things, and perhaps we don't completely still. But it is through this long and often hard process of working through distance some solutions have been found. But more importantly, we have created a sacred space where disagreement by all can be facilitated and incorporated into the process. In order to heal the relationships between community and police, there will have to be a safe space for disagreement and contention. As we move this process forward, we look forward to seeing the courageousness in our leaders so that that tension can be held and justice can be. And to the families of those who have lost loved ones, we have not forgotten your pain. It is that pain that drives us to continue working to change and reminds us of letting suffice so long as the culture of our police perpetuates brutality. We will continue to work and walk with you for as long as it takes. Thank you very much.
It's a beautiful day in Seattle. Questions?
Well, I would say, first off, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't see any representatives from Seattle Police or the unions or anything like that. This seems very one-sided. How do you respond to some of the things that maybe the police unions or the department itself disagree with in this legislation?
Well, the chief was going to be here, and there was some, I'm not exactly sure why we don't have somebody here, but it's a snafu, not a snub, so I think you need to understand that. I think that in general, the police department feels pretty good about where we're going on accountability. Now, there's some particulars that they, under collective bargaining rights, have the right to bargain. So I don't see any tension except the usual tension that the executive has with any labor union.
Can you lay out what those particulars are? What parts of legislation are going to be based on collective bargaining?
So, as you know, collective bargaining is not something that part of the laws of collective bargaining is you don't talk about collective bargaining. But I'll give you a general sense of it. We can proceed with setting up these offices, proceed with identifying the people we want to hire. There are certain roles and responsibilities that will need to be negotiated. And we can give you a little more technical understanding later about that.
When the previous draft of the collective bargaining was leaked, a lot of people were sort of disappointed that some of what they wanted were not in it. What guarantees can you give the people who are really excited about the legislation that was passed today that the same thing won't happen?
Well, I also heard a lot of people, particularly behind me, who were really happy with what was in it. And I think it's how you read it. I can't predict how a collective bargaining situation will turn out, but I do know that if Seattle's interested in reaching compliance, then we need to listen to what the judge said. He said constitutional policing should not be purchased.
And as far as budget goes, what guarantees can you give that these oversight processes will continue to be budgeted for?
They'll be in my budget, but I like any future mayor and any future legislative body can't predict what future mayors and future legislative bodies might do. But I can't see anybody who comes after me or comes after the council members behind me who would want to do anything but move forward and budget and fund these things, because you see what happens when things go wrong in our police department. We've seen what happened. We had the federal government in here. It's cost us a hell of a lot of money to get into compliance so far. So I don't think you'll see people moving backwards. And as I said, when I came into office and during the last campaign, I said we were going to make this happen, and we're making it happen, and funding will be part of it.
Any reconsideration on a certain percentage of the budget to guarantee?
I think we've reached our agreement. Okay, with that, thank you all very much.
Ice cream over here.
Oh, really?
Yes. Ice cream and party.
I just need to get my freckled skin out of this.